6:30 in the evening. The records show that everybody is here and happy, and it's fall. It's raining outside and it's dark outside. So, councilors, you have the minutes of your September 28th meeting in front of you, and do they meet with your approval? Don't all say anything at once.
I move to approve the minutes as received.
Motion?
Second.
Second by Councilor Takis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. I don't see anybody for public comment at this point, so I'm going to move forward. Under my report, I have a variety of just different things to just keep you informed. I had the pleasure of attending the Ghost Walk. It feels just like a few days ago. It was a great time, and I understand 1,200 people participate. I handed out a lot of maps, and Marilyn says that there were 1,200 people. I had a chance to attend the job fair yesterday that the city put on, and what a wonderful event that was. The businesses had lots of people. They all got applications. They were very happy that Independence put that on. And also, they like the fact that folks in Independence don't sit around. Stuff gets done. Mr. Pessamir and I had a chance to take the new local person for Pacific Power around our community, sharing our vision, projects, housing, businesses, and all the activities that we're doing so they understand where we're going. We also had the chance to, on a different day, take new Polk County Commissioner Jeremy Gordon around, showing him what we're doing, what we're working on. They're talking about everything from housing to health care. Also in new people, Senator Merkley's office, Betsy, is the new district person, and so we took her on also on a tour, showing her what's going on and talking about where we're trying to go and different things, because it never hurts to have a United States Senator on board. As you know, I'm on the COG legislative meeting. We have a convening coming up in towards the end of the month. It's going to be discussion of housing, and we're trying to help legislators and others understand the issues related to housing in the region and moving forward on that. As you folks know, the LOC conference in person was canceled because of the increase in COVID in the Bend area, and yeah, their hospital was full, and so the board chose not to have an in-person conference, that there will be some activities. I do continue to attend the board as a past president and will continue being there. And I've also been asked as a past president to serve on the nominating committee for the board of directors of the League of Oregon Cities. And also continuing to work with the LOC, League of Oregon Cities Foundation, of which I'm the president. We're expanding some of our fundraising efforts to raise additional funds especially for those cities that don't have the funds to send counselors and mayors to trainings and things like that. So continuing to move forward on that. So that's my report. A lot of it just quick so that you know that I'm not letting grass grow between my toes. And another person that's not letting grass grow between his toes, what a transition here. Mr. Pessamir, to your report.
Mayor, can I just ask you one quick question about the housing issue? Are conversations focusing on all electric homes versus?
It's the whole issue of housing and supply.
Okay.
So thank you, Mayor. So just a couple of things to talk about tonight, all of them good news and just information. So first thing I want to talk about is the low-income household water assistance program. The Congress appropriated $638 million in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and then an additional $500 million in the American Rescue Plan for new emergency water and wastewater assistance program. The program's new, obviously it's not for new water. The legislation provides emergency assistance to low-income households, particularly those with the lowest incomes that pay a high proportion of household income for drinking water and wastewater services. Oregon Housing and Community Services has been selected to serve as the Oregon's grantee, and they are actually going to be working through the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency at the Polk County level. So as we're kind of looking into this program, it's something the city actually has to send in an application to participate. We've looked at it, and I think that's something that we're going to do if we haven't done it already. And one of the things that, I was really asking about is, how, available is this to people? Is it going to have a million pieces of red tape and be really hard to do? And I'm kind of hearing the opposite. So I think we're pretty excited that this is going to be one of those items that I talked about that fall into the resident support category, where this is all outside funding, and then it's up to us to figure out how to apply it to people in our community, and then make those connections where we don't see needs from our level. So a lot more to figure out. It's pretty new, but at least it's a program that is going to be available here before too long. Speaking of resident support ideas, I have received some stuff from Councilor Core. She says she's going to kind of polish it up and get it to me here in a kind of a finalized form soon. If you have any other thing that you want to share with me, if you could try to get it to me by October 26th, which is the next council meeting, that would be great. But I know you guys are out there talking to people, and you're probably hearing areas where they're still struggling to recover. So please send me your ideas, and we'll combine them with staff ideas and other things that we hear, and start working on what that program is going to look like in more detail to bring back to you. I am happy, very happy, to announce that Gerald Fisher has accepted our offer to be our new Public Works Director. Gerald comes from Malala, where he's been a Public Works Director for a number of years, and before that in Silverton. He worked in the private sector for at least 15 years before that, so he has lots of experience in Public Works and doing things, so I'm really excited to bring him on. He'll probably start next Wednesday is his starting day. So glad to have him on board and handing that off. It's been Ken Perkins and myself have been kind of carrying most of the load there along with his staff, and it'll be nice to pass that off to someone who can focus on that full time. Mayor mentioned the job fair. Everything I've heard back so far is been very positive. There weren't a ton of applicants, but certainly the ones that seemed to come down were decent quality for the people, and so the businesses, at least that I've talked to, all got applications and are pretty happy. We'll follow up with everybody just to make sure we understand how it went. Obviously, we'd like to get more applicants kind of moving through, but all you need is a few good ones to actually make a difference. So as we follow up on that, we'll figure out if there's a need to do that again, and if so, how we can kind of adjust to make that work better. But overall, I heard pretty good things. Courtney Williams spent a tremendous amount of time on that, and some other staff, but Courtney really carried most of the weight on that, so that was much appreciated. Happy to announce that we did get the Housing Needs Analysis grant, so that's $30,000 to $45,000 to hire a consultant to come in and do a look at what our housing needs are. We're going to be required to do that, as I told you before, once we tip over the 10,000 mark, which will probably be fairly soon. So it's good that we actually have some money from the state to actually do that program. So that is good. And then finally, a couple projects made it through the Land Use and Historic Preservation Commissions here recently. I don't think the Elks Lodge, or lot number 7, actually went to the Historic Planning Commission, but it did get its planning approval. So looking forward to actually getting that project done and the parking lot associated with it. And then finally, Independence Station, which is being renamed to Station 203 by the developer, received both its land use approval and the Historic Preservation Commission approval. They have submitted their building plans for review, and so within the next few weeks, a few months, those plans should be approved as long as they're complete and we get the payments, and after that they would be able to start construction. So it's my understanding that they're already out there soliciting bids from contractors to figure out how to finish that. So big project has been talked about a lot, but definitely has been slowly moving its way through the process and has really no hurdles in its way from getting finished as far as I know at this point.
And the plan is the same, a mixed residential, commercial?
It is.
Kind of setup?
It's very similar to what it was before. They were doing some things on the roof before, like putting a swimming pool and a bunch of very large equipment up there for for green energy type things.
Yeah.
That's actually going to be a 4th floor of residential up there as well. So, but definitely in a good position to move forward. There's obviously a lot of value in the underground structure that was done to that building, as well as all the concrete that's there. So they'll be able to take it and, you know, save many, many, many months just from the work that's already been done at that site. So pretty exciting. And that's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Additional questions for the manager? Okay, since you're already standing there, would you like to introduce and city attorney?
Sure. Our city attorney, Carrie Connolly, is going to join us remotely. And she's going to talk just briefly about executive sessions and just how they work, and just kind of so that you can see and the community can hear what executive sessions are all about before we go into an executive session. So she's going to do that, and then my understanding is from there we will go into an executive session with City Council to talk about some business.
Sound good?
Give Jason here a second.
So
Do his
Jason's
magic,
just getting that. So since Jason's connecting, does anybody have, since I don't anticipate that we're going to have action going on after the executive sessions, any announcements that need to be made at this point? I didn't think so, but I wanted to just give that opportunity. Okay. I'm waiting for her to come up on our screen.
All right, Gary, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, you are live.
Are we? Thank you. Can somebody orient me? I was expecting to be able to see the council, and I'm not sure, are we in executive session?
So Carrie, we are not in executive session yet. I just kind of handed it off for you to kind of give that introduction that we wanted to do in the public meeting, talking about what executive sessions are about, and just you know, a brief overview so council can hear that and the community can hear it, and then we'll go into executive session and read the scripts and so on.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Just needed to understand where we were.
Good evening and welcome.
So pardon me?
Good evening and welcome. Were you able to hear me?
The mayor welcomes you to the meeting, Carrie.
So,
Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask people to speak up. I can hear anyone close to the mic, apparently, but as they move further away, it's harder for me to hear. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So as an initial point, I just want to kind of do a little change to the agenda. First off, we're adding in a minor training here, and the original agenda noticed the executive session under 192660 sub 2 sub H for the purpose of conferring with the city attorney concerning legal rights and duties regarding litigation likely to be filed. It was then changed to 2F for the consideration of confidential privileged records. I am now going to combine the two. I'd like when you go into executive session, Mr. Mayor, if you could use both bases, that would be helpful.
Will do.
And, all right, I appreciate that. Thank you. So executive sessions, for those who have been around a long time and those who are new to the council, I guess for those that are new to the council, I'm Carrie Connolly. I'm one of the city attorneys. I've been city attorney since around 2014, I believe, maybe earlier than that. So it's been a good amount of time. Began in your old city hall, just to give you some frame of reference. And my office helps on a number of city issues, labor, personnel. I do public contracting, general city work. And one of those things that we help with are public meetings. And so in a public meeting, when we are going into executive session, and the governing body chooses to go into executive session, that can happen only under very, very narrow circumstances. And that's why we are being particular about the statutory sections under which the mayor will call the executive session in a couple minutes. It is not not very convenient. There are many things that cities and councilors would like to discuss amongst themselves in private, and you are not allowed to do that. We have to make sure it falls squarely in these very narrow parameters. So the three, I guess, of the most common are to discuss real estate transactions, another is to discuss pending, threatened, or current litigation, and another would be to discuss documents that are privileged, so that, say, I wrote or someone from my office wrote, and if you called an executive session to discuss those items, you have to stay within the four corners of what I wrote. It cannot be a springboard or a platform to move off into either more detailed discussions or different discussions that are tangentially related. So that gets announced at the beginning of the executive session. When in executive session, there's a prohibition on making final decisions. So we can discuss matters, you can ask questions. Sometimes there can be a minimal consensus around direction to staff, but there can be no motions, there can be no final action of the council, which is kind of a hard thing to remember at the end of a late evening when you want to wrap things up. So I'm here to help both police the parameters and as well as to remind you about those restrictions. Media, news media can attend most all executive sessions, but they cannot report on the subject of the conversations unless they hear it outside the confines of the executive session. So counselors are cautioned to not share any information learned in executive session. Any mention of that confidential conversation or even the topic can wave a flag for an overhearing news media person to be able to report on the entire subject, entire matter that was discussed that they were in there, that they heard. And then the only other, I guess, important piece, cautionary item, is that if a council goes into executive session to discuss an item that isn't authorized by statute, the Government Ethics Commission polices ethics, the executive session portion of the public meetings laws. And so an improper executive session is a basis for an ethics complaint and the civil penalties and associated process that goes with that. Mr. Mayor, is there any other aspect of executive sessions that would be helpful to cover at this time?
Councilor Coor has a question.
Carrie, can you speak to note-taking during an executive session? Who should be taking notes if it's allowable for counselors to take notes?
That is a great question. Because notes that you take that pertain to any city business become public records, any notes that you take I would recommend that they be on, so in the meeting, when it's called to discuss a privileged document, you could maybe make notes on the document that's distributed to you. That is going to be turned back into the city manager at the end of the executive session. And so it is not able to be circulated publicly, and the proper gatekeeper of public records then is in charge of those. So beyond that, I wouldn't take notes.
Gotcha, thank you.
Additional questions for the attorney at this point? Mr. Pessemer, is there anything else that we needed to cover in this portion?
I don't think so. Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, so we're going to go into executive session now, and I'm going to read my script. So, the Independent City Council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of reviewing records from the city attorney. The executive session held pursuant to ORS 1926602F and ORS 1926602H regarding exempt public records. Representative of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decisions may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we'll return to open session and welcome the audience back in the room. And since we have nothing else, when we go out of an executive session, we'll say the word adjourn and we'll be done. Okay? So with that read, we are now going to go to executive session.